Great, thank you. Welcome to the Yuba County Board of Supervisors meeting for Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021. So as a courtesy to others, please have your microphone muted at all times when you are not speaking. All items on the agenda and other than correspondence and board and staff member reports are considered items for which the board may take action. The public will be given an opportunity to comment on action items on the agenda when the item is heard, and comments shall be limited to 3 to 5 minutes per individual or group. So we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Supervisor Vasquez.
Okay, everybody mute. Stand, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor.
I have to get a copy of that.
Next up is the consent agenda. All matters listed under consent agenda are considered to be routine and can be enacted in one motion. Is there any board discussion on the consent agenda or anything that the board would like to pull?
Yes, I would like to.
Through the chair, could we do a roll call?
Oh, sorry. Let's back up and do roll call, please.
Supervisor Vasquez,
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer,
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhrer,
Here.
Supervisor Bradford,
Here.
Supervisor Fletcher.
Here.
Okay, and I believe both Supervisor Vasquez and Supervisor Fuhrer had something to say. So Supervisor Vasquez?
The continuing automatic emergencies, is there a reason for doing that? See, we got the cannabis, and I'm sure they've explained it before, but these are, if they're items that are going to be continually out there, I don't know why they would be an emergency.
Well, I would believe there's probably 4 of them on this meeting. They all tend to be ongoing issues, whether it's the extreme fire risk issue, which is ongoing, the complex fire and the Willow fire, continuing to clean up, take care of, even though there's nothing burning at the time. And the cannabis continues to be an illegal issue in the foothills, if not in the valley.
Okay, because I've had questions on that. So
Yeah, if we could remove the cannabis from the consent agenda and we can discuss it, or we can discuss it here, whichever's preferable.
So if we remove one, you might remove all of them.
I'm not saying remove one. What I'm saying is I just want to know if they're necessary for us to continue on.
So I think some of them, at least the ones related to wildfires or flooding disasters that have occurred, my understanding is they have to remain on the agenda as emergencies until we've closed out all reimbursement through FEMA and through Cal OES. So when I see Kevin Mallon shaking his head, so at least that's why those ones are on there. I think we could certainly all agree that those technically those emergencies have passed, but it's kind of a technicality that we can't declare an end to the emergency until all the books are closed with respect to funding. So
Typical government. Yes. Okay.
So Seth, I know you would like to discuss one in particular. So why don't we pull that one and then we can vote on the others?
Okay.
So we'll pull 106/2021. Any additional board comment? Okay, any public comment on this item? I know Kimberly has her hand raised, but I believe it is for general public comment according to, it looks like we do have a public comment on the consent agenda from Genesis. So Mary, if you'd like to unmute him, please. Oh, never mind. It's about cannabis. So we'll take that when we discuss that item in a bit. Sorry. Okay. So it appears there's no public comment request on anything on the consent agenda with the exception of cannabis. And so I will accept a motion.
Through the chair, we do have a comment from Kimberly that says she wants a comment on an item on consent.
Consent, okay. Yeah. And it looks like Genesis is saying he has an item on consent that he wants to talk about. I'm guess it's cannabis. Okay, so we will be talking about cannabis later on under county departments. So with that, we're going to go ahead and take a vote on. First, we'll take a motion on the consent agenda. Then we will take a vote.
Move to approve.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
I can second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Roll call vote on the consent agenda, please.
Supervisor Vasquez,
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer,
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhrer,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford,
Yes.
Supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. And we will revisit the cannabis item under county departments. That'll be the first item that we take. So we will move on to public communication now. Any person may speak about any subject of concern, provided it is within the jurisdiction of the Board of Supervisors and is not already on today's agenda. The total amount of time allotted for receiving such public communication shall be limited to a total of 15 minutes, and each individual or group will be limited to no more than 3 minutes. If you wish to comment, you can use the raise hand function located on the bottom ribbon in Zoom, or you can press *9 if you're calling in. You may also send a request to the meeting host via chat icon, also located on the bottom ribbon. Note, no board action can be taken on any comments made under this heading. And just a reminder, this is for public who wishes to speak on something that is not already on the agenda. So I do know we have public comments probably on several items further down on the agenda. So I know Kimberly has something she'd like to speak about that is not on the agenda. So Mary, if you can. Go ahead, Kimberly.
Hello, yes, I'm Rebecca Carlson. I'm speaking on Kimberly's phone. And I just want to thank you, gentlemen, for the things that you have put on the agenda. I appreciate you moving forward with that. And I want to continue to remind you that you took an oath of office to protect the people in this county, foreign and domestic enemies. And right now, we have domestic enemies. And domestic enemy number one right now is Gavin Newsom. And he is a tyrannical dictator. And we need to stop listening to him. And you need to get back to the Constitution. And we just pledged to the flag. That flag is an American flag. It's not a Chinese flag. And so I'm just going to continue to put pressure. These board meetings need to be open. Every one of you gentlemen go to the grocery store, and it's not 25% capacity. These board meetings, there's no reason. This virus, which is a pandemic, whatever you want to think of it, it's a 99.9% survival rate. So there's no reason for social distancing. Please open up these meetings and allow us to speak to you face to face. And there's other things that need to be put on the agenda. And we need to open this county up. And I want to ask, how many people in the county workers, how many of them have lost their jobs in the past year? How many people have been given raises? How many people have taken a pay cut? Because the community's done it, but has the county done it? Have the county workers done it? Did you lose your retirement? Have you dipped into your savings? These are questions that I have for you, because the people you're serving or supposedly serving are suffering. They're losing their businesses and they're barely staying open if they have already not closed. So please take consideration. And I'm not asking anymore. I'm telling, because you work for us. You work for the people. And I'm here to remind you of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional public comment on something that is not on the agenda? And just a reminder, we will be talking about opening meetings up to the public later on the agenda. So looking for items that are not on the agenda that the public wishes to address the board on. Okay. I do not see anything. Do you, Mary?
Through the chair, no, there's no raised hands.
Okay. Then we will go ahead and move on to item, under county departments, item 106, 2021, which is the adopt resolution proclaiming continued local emergency regarding prohibition of illegal cannabis cultivation. So this, would you like to start, Supervisor Fuhrer?
Sure. It's a edict that's been in effect for over 4 years. We have not received any remuneration from the state or federal level in the way of support or cash. And so it seems to be a state of emergency that has not garnered the gain for the county. And it just seems duplicative of any actual value, or sorry, not duplicative. It doesn't seem to be providing that value. I'd like to reduce states of emergency whenever possible. It seems to me that they lose their meaning if we overuse them. Code enforcement, by the same criteria, would be a state of emergency in that we have more work than we're able to take care of, and we're not fulfilling the need. So I think it would be better to limit states of emergency to, as you pointed out, a technicality of funding, or where there's an actual emergency and risk.
To the chair.
Yes, Andy.
There is a constant state of emergency for marijuana growth in the forests. We have marijuana ordinance. Very few people conform to that. This emergency is all the illegal grows and all the pollution that they put in the ground and all the destruction from the aftermath of the hill grows. I mean, if you go up there, you see, they've got pipe, they've got creeks polluted, they've got so many things that we really need to let the people know. That's why we have an emergency for marijuana. I think the sheriff could tell you better on all the emergency situations he's run across up in the hill areas. It's a dangerous area to be at when they have grows. They have guns. They have, and they don't hesitate to use them. So I think it's a valid emergency.
And so through the chair, if Sheriff Anderson, could you give us, is there still an issue with illegal marijuana grows in the foothills or throughout Yuba County?
If I can, since there's no response yet, I think it's fair to say that there is absolutely illegal grows, and there's no question about that, but there's also code violations. There's also various crimes that are occurring. Those aren't states of emergency.
Those are, marijuana is an armed state of war right now in the hills.
So I was able to figure out the mute button here. I apologize for that, but and certainly I'm not advocating for the state of emergency or against the state of emergency, but I can tell you without hesitation that we absolutely have a huge problem in the hills. And just to clarify, we do receive federal funding annually from the Domestic Cannabis Eradication Suppression Program. And this year, it's based on prior years. So last year we set record numbers for the eradication, the number of plants eradicated specifically in the 5th district. And we do receive annual federal dollars that we utilize specifically for marijuana eradication. And this year we received $70,000 from the federal government. So there's definitely, it tasks our staff annually trying to combat the illegal grows. Certainly I understand exactly what you're saying, Mr. Fuhrer, with the code enforcement, the blight issues, and we've made those a priority as well. But I think, the state emergency shows that we are in need of assistance from the state, although I don't know that we have received any, not to my knowledge. We do get strong support from the state, the guard. They come and they give us flight time. If you would ever be interested in going up in a helicopter, I can kind of show you what we're talking about with the problems that we have specifically in the 5th district. And I extend that offer to all the board members if they would like to go up and see, because without seeing it with your own eyes, it's hard for me to convey, some of the problems that are associated. And it's not just marijuana, it's the people that come with, the harvest season, and the people that come to victimize the marijuana growers. I'm certainly not saying that marijuana, I'm not in support of what's going on in the foothills. I think marijuana, there's a legal path for them to take to grow marijuana, and we've seen that they're just not willing to do that. So if you'd like to go on a helicopter ride anytime, we'll take you up and show you.
I would very much enjoy that. So please give me a call when that's available. I will do that. But I guess my question is, the $70,000, for instance, from the federal government, that was not contingent on our state of emergency.
No, and that's what I said. I don't know that, honestly, the state of emergency has gained us anything. It seems to be falling on deaf ears, but
right.
We do receive federal funding. I just wanted to clarify that point.
Yeah. No, and there's no definite, if I come across in any way that I want you to decline in your aggressive tactics, that's not what I'm saying. I'm simply saying that the state of emergency is useless. So let's not have it be something that we continue.
Through the chair, I'd like you to remember that we had a couple of deputies got shot, and there have been gunfire incidents up there still, and it's still a lot of places that it's not healthy to walk. So I would like to see it stay, because.
And through the chair, I believe that the sheriff probably made as good a statement as I can make. The community has voted repeatedly on this issue, and I support that we do not maintain any marijuana, and most of it is illegal. And the fact that we don't have a grow operation that is legal, that makes everything illegal. It is a problem, continues to be a problem, and I am in favor of leaving it on here.
Okay, let's, is that it for now for the board? If so, we'll go. I know there's a couple of public comments on this item, then we'll bring it back to the board after that. So can we start off with Genesis, Mary?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to comment on this, that, a state of emergency lasting from December 2017 and being renewed every 60 days since, that seems to me like it's not, how can you have an emergency for that long? It doesn't seem viable. It doesn't seem reasonable. And this is kind of the thing that we're looking at with COVID as well. It's kind of an echo of that I see as this kind of disregard for what does emergency actually mean. If we're actually in an emergency for that long, what's going on? So that's what I want to say about it. And I heard about pollution. That is something that, I think can be handled outside of the state of emergency. But other than that, I think renewing the state of emergency constantly every 60 days since December 2017, that seems ridiculous. That seems overboard to me. So that's what I want to say about that. And I agree with Seth that we can handle this without that state of emergency. So that's what I have for now. Thank you.
Charles? Mary, can we unmute Charles, please? Thank you.
Charles, there you go.
There you go. Thank you. Charles Sharp in Oregon House. I think the state of emergency began after the shootout. Supervisor Vasquez mentioned that happened like a quarter of a mile from my house. And, maybe it was the right decision at the time. It was really bad. And it's not to say that we don't have a lot of growing going on, but also I think Sheriff Anderson is doing the best job he can to keep the problem, address it as best you can. Doesn't mean we don't have issues, but I think to a certain extent, people are kind of discouraged from coming here, and they should be. And so I would like to see more efforts as the county can manage to, code enforcement, whatever we can do, seize people's properties, just take it away from them if they're growing or the owner is allowing it or whatever. And so I don't quite understand the ongoing state of emergency either. It may have served a purpose at its time, but if it's not giving us money or anything, I don't know. It's an ongoing chronic problem, but I don't know if it's such of a issue of an emergency at this time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Charles. Okay, I don't see any other public comment. So with that, I will bring it back to the board. Any discussion or any motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Vasquez,
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer,
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhr,
No.
Supervisor Bradford,
Yes.
Supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, next we will move on to item 135, 2021, Community Development and Services, adopt resolution authorizing chair to execute a regulatory agreement with all of her specific associates for the Cedar Lane Family Apartment Project and make a finding of public benefit for the project pursuant to Government Code 25539.4.
Through the chair, this is Kevin Perkins with Yuba County Community Development. The next four items are all interrelated, so I want to take the time to do a background on how we got to where we are so that I don't have to repeat it on all four items, and then I'll get into the specifics of the four items before your board. So basically this project, the Cedar Lane apartment, the two different apartment complexes that are in the process of hopefully getting built this spring at the Cedar Lane property is about a 5-year project in the making. In 2016, the county acquired the Cedar Lane property. It's a 13.7 acre parcel that's basically south of Cedar Lane School and just north of Feather River Boulevard in the community of West Linda. The county sought to acquire this property to develop an affordable housing project. Part of the reason we were interested in this property was its proximity to Cedar Lane School and also its proximity to existing infrastructure such as sewer, water, public transportation, etc. After acquiring the property in 2016, the county entered into a development agreement with Regional Housing Authority that gave Regional Housing Authority the exclusive rights to develop the Cedar Lane project with a 150 unit affordable housing project and gave them the opportunity to purchase the property from the county subject to appraised value at the time of the appraised value of the property at the time that the property was going to be sold. Fast forward to 2020, last June, your board made a commitment to the project to defer the fees, the development impact fees, and the building permit fees for both the family project, which is a 108 unit family project that is geared towards having low and very low income residents living there, and then also defer the fees for building and development impact fees for a 48 or a 41 unit, permanent supportive housing project. And your board also made a commitment to provide a letter of project support for both projects as part of the project's tax credit application, which is a competitive application process to receive funding for affordable housing. In December of 2020, both projects, the 108 unit family project and also the 48 unit permanent supportive housing project, received tax credit funding, which was, a really exciting development in terms of, these projects moving forward. And now at this time, we're coming back to the board, regional housing is coming back to the board to finalize the deals for financing and also the sale of the Cedar Lane property. So that's a little bit of context of where we got. And so I'll go over the next 4 items separately. So this first item, item 135, is to authorize your chair to execute a regulatory agreement with the Oliver Pacific Associates for the Cedar Lane family project and make a finding of public benefit pursuant to Government Code 25539.4. So basically the government code I just cited allows jurisdictions, counties to sell, convey, or generally dispose of property for affordable housing as long as a public benefit or interest is made. In terms of the regulatory agreement before your board, it's actually an agreement that will be deed restricted on the property that requires that for this family project, the 108 unit family project, that the project be deed restricted for affordable housing for a period of 55 years. And in exchange, this agreement will allow the county to move forward with selling the property and entering into the other loan agreements that will be on the next item. So one of the things I do want to note about this regulatory agreement for the 108 unit property is 71. This agreement requires that 71 of the units be dedicated to the very low housing type and 36 of the units to the low housing type. What that means is in the affordable housing world, there's different income classifications for affordability. And the very low income classification basically is 50% of the average monthly income in Yuba County, and the low category is 80% of the average monthly income in the county. And there's some other formulas depending on the size of the family and the number of bedrooms that help determine rent for a unit. So that will be a requirement of this regulatory agreement, and the regulatory agreement will require that as part of the approval that these projects will be required to have an affordability component to it for a period of 55 years. So I'm here, that's where I'm at right now on discussing item 135. I'm here to answer any questions. And I also want you to know that Gus Becerra, the Executive Director of Regional Housing Authority, is online as well to answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you, Kevin. Any questions or comments from the board on this item?
Well, it's 5 years in the making and a great project for Yuba County. And with that, I'll make the motion to adopt the resolution and make a finding of public benefit for the project. I think this is something sorely needed. I don't know if the management is going to be the same as the other projects that we have there, but they have very good management, and it adds to the neighborhood rather than detracts. So.
Second that.
I have a first and a second. Any other board member comments or questions? Looks like Seth has something.
Sorry, I had mute on. My apologies. Yeah, I was curious how it was determined it would be 2/3 very low income, which I'm very excited about, and only 1/3 of 80%. Where did that decision come from?
Yes, could you please respond to that?
Absolutely, Kevin. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Supervisor Fear, if you're referring to the family project, we don't go as high as 80%. We're going as high as 60% of AMI. So we have 30% units 40%, 50, and 60% units. And the reason for that spread is financial feasibility. It just, if we were to lump all of those into the 30 and 40th percentile, the deal wouldn't pencil. So we would need a lot more subsidy from, whether it be the county or the state or whatever, to fill that gap with a drop in revenue, because you're obviously, as you know, 50, 60% units provide more revenue than your 30 and 40% units. So it's strictly because of project feasibility. But we are governed by our funding sources, with these particular funding sources, to not go above 60%. So that's our cap.
That's
and
great.
then on the PSH deal, just as additional information, the permanent supportive housing deal, on that one, we're only going as high as 30%, but we have a lot more soft financing. I mean, the county was awarded over $3 million from the state, and no place like home financing from state HCD, and then as well as the public leverage that the county approved last year. So with that much more local and state leverage, we're able to do more deep targeting for income in the permanent supportive housing deal.
On the PSH deal, half the units, my understanding is going to go to those who have mental capacity needs of a moderate level. Is it possible to have all 40 units go to that? That way, because my understanding is that there's going to be supportive services for that specific niche, that they're going to receive medication, supervision, guidance, etc. Wouldn't it make sense to do all 40 units that way? That way we could take care of more people in that niche.
So there's not enough financing from the No Place Like Home program to make it 100% serving the homeless with a mental illness. The $3.3 million that the county received from No Place Like Home has what the state calls loan limits per unit. So that 3.3 million basically buys, so to speak, for lack of a better word, I believe it's 19 units of those that we're targeting who are homeless with a mental disability. So unfortunately, unless we had more No Place Like Home financing, we cannot add more of those type of units. The other, what would that be, 21 units, I believe, are targeting the general homeless, and we have service providers for each side. Our behavioral health department will provide supportive services for those homeless with a mental disability, and there is a local nonprofit service provider that you're probably aware of named Hands of Hope, and that agency will be providing all the wraparound supportive services for the general homeless population, so the other half of the unit, so to speak. So that's a long answer to your short question, but it's basically because of the amount of No Place Like Home funding that we have. We can only go up to those 19, 20 units. I don't recall at the moment.
And so the funding we're using for the other 20 units can't be used specifically. It has to specifically not be mentally handicapped.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, I do not see any public comment, any hands raised or anything in the chat. Do you, Mary? Okay, I have a first and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Vasquez,
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer,
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhrer,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford,
Yes.
Supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So now we will move on to 136, 2021. Kevin, back to you.
Yeah, again, Kevin Perkins, Yuba County CDSA. So this next item would authorize the board chair to enter into effectively 4 different agreements. I'll go over what those agreements are. One thing I do want to quickly mention is these agreements are between the county and the All-for Pacific Associates. The All-for Pacific Associates, as mentioned in your staff report, is a limited partnership that Regional Housing has entered into with Pacific West Communities, who is their partner in terms of developing this site. And so each one of these deals will have a different limited partnership for liability purposes and also financing purposes, because each one of these deals is financed separately. So I just wanted to give you a little clarity on that item. And also I did forget to mention that, it's just a kind of a talking point in terms of the investment into the community of West Linda. The combined permanent supportive housing and family housing investment by Regional Housing and Pacific West Community is slightly over $50 million. The family project is roughly around 33 million, and the permanent supportive housing is $17 million. And in addition to that, the county's Public Works Department has secured grant financing to redo the streets of Feather River Boulevard from Highway 70 to Alicia Avenue to Cedar Lane, and Cedar Lane between Alicia and Garden Avenue. And the Public Works Department has an application in that they expect funding for Garden Avenue from Cedar Lane to Feather River Boulevard. Those projects alone are another additional $4 to $5 million in infrastructure investment in this area. So, I don't want to tout the significance of these projects too much, but that's quite a bit of money, and it could turn into a real transformation into our community of West Linda. So moving on to the actual items in front of you, this would allow the board chair to execute an acquisition loan agreement between all of our Pacific associates in the county for the amount of $1.46 million. That $1,460,000 amount was the appraised value for the family project. And the terms of this acquisition loan agreement would be for a period of 55 years, 3% simple interest, and paid through residual income receipts, excuse me. The second, and this acquisition loan agreement is consistent with the 2018 development agreement. The second item is a fee deferral loan agreement, which is consistent with your board's 2020 commitment to the project, which would have a fee deferral in the amount of $461,739.95, which is a combination of development impact fees and building permit fees. This fee deferral would be for a term of 55 years at 3% simple interest and paid through residual income receipts. The third item is a subordination agreement. This agreement would be between Yuba County and Bank of the West. Bank of the West is the primary financier for the family project, and this agreement would have the county agree that Bank of the West is in senior lender position in terms of the loans, their loan on the property and the county's loan for the land and the fee agreement. And the last item is the purchase and sell agreement and escrow instructions. This is basically an agreement between Yuba County and all of our Pacific associates, which states the terms for escrow needed to transfer the property over to the All of First Pacific associates. That's my general overview of what the four agreements. This resolution is allowing the board chair to execute. I'm here to answer any questions, and Gus Becerra again is here from Regional Housing to answer any questions you might have.
Through the chair, Kevin, can that be done with one motion? Or
yes, this item, this is one resolution that would allow you to make all of or authorize the board chair to execute all of these agreements in one motion.
So moved.
I have a first. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a first by Supervisor Vasquez, a second by Supervisor Fletcher. Any additional comments on this item from the board? Okay, any public comments on this item? Do not see any hands raised. So I'll just say, since I didn't comment on the last one, I'm very excited about these projects. And so thank you, everyone who's been working on them. I think they do have the ability to transform that community, and they also have the ability to provide much needed affordable housing in our community. So, okay, roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Vasquez,
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer,
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhrer,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford,
Yes.
Supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to 131, 2021, which is Community Development and Services, adopt resolution authorizing chair to execute a regulatory agreement with the Olivehurst PSH Pacific Associates for the Cedar Lane PSH apartment project and make a finding of public benefit for the project pursuant to Government Code 25539.4. You're up again, Kevin.
Okay, again, through the chair, Kevin Perkins, Yuba County CDSA. This item is very similar to the last regulatory agreement that your board just authorized. In this case, this is specifically for the 41-unit permanent supportive housing project. Again, this agreement would require the property to be deed restricted for the affordability component for a period of 55 years and require that the units be rented out to the very low income population. I'm here, it's the exact same regulatory agreement as the last one, minus these two details that I was talking about. So I'm here to answer any questions if your board has some. And again, Gus Becerra from Regional Housing is here as well.
Any questions or comments from the board? Any questions?
Great program. I do appreciate Gus being here to answer any questions, but I can tell you this is a great program for our community. I'll make the motion to approve.
Okay, I have a first. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, first from Supervisor Fletcher, second from Supervisor Vasquez. Is there any public comment on this item? Do not see any. Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Vasquez,
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer,
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhrer,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford,
Yes.
Supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Great, thank you. One more item in this series, item 134, 2021, Community Development and Services, adopt resolution authorizing chair to execute the acquisition loan agreement, fee deferral loan agreement, subordination agreement, and purchase and sale escrow instructions for the Cedar Lane PSH apartment complex. Kevin?
All right, through the chair, Kevin Perkins, Yuba County Community Development. This resolution would allow the board chair to execute the acquisition loan agreement for the permanent supportive housing project. In this case, the appraised value for the land that the permanent supportive housing project will be situated on was appraised at $570,000. The term for this agreement would be 55 years with 3% simple interest paid through residual income receipts. For the fee deferral loan agreement, the amount is $136,036.95. Again, this is the combined building permit fees and development impact fees. The term of this agreement would be 55 years with a payment schedule based off of 3% interest and paid through residual income receipts. The third item, the subordination agreement, would be an agreement between the county and Umpqua Bank. Umpqua Bank is the primary lender on the PSH project, and this would allow Umpqua Bank to be in the senior lender in terms of loan position on this deal. And the last item is the purchase and sale agreements and escrow instructions, which are an agreement between the county and Olivehurst PSH Pacific Associates on the terms of escrow for transferring title. I'm here to answer any questions. And again, Gus Becerra from Regional Housing is here as well.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, have a first from Supervisor Fletcher and a second from Supervisor Vasquez. Any comment from the public? Okay, seeing none, roll call vote, please, Mary.
Supervisor Vasquez,
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer,
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhr,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford,
Yes.
Supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Before
Thank
we
you,
move
Mr.
on
Chair,
to,
members of the board, thank you so much for your support. We're looking forward to constructing 2 great projects for your community. Looking forward to it. Thank you for your time.
thank you, Gus. Okay, before we move on to item 88, I just wanted to remind the board members and the public of the process for items under county departments, as I believe we have a few items where we might have a substantial amount of public comment. And so the process is that staff will introduce and present the item to the board, at which point the board may ask questions and make statements regarding the item. Then the public will be given an opportunity to address the board about the item. Each interested member of the public may address the board once and for up to 3 minutes. After receiving any public comment on the item, the board will have an opportunity for additional discussion, at which point a motion will be entertained, and if one is made, a vote will be taken. So thank you. And Kevin Mallon, I believe this item is for you, 88-2021, County Administrator. Discuss expanding public participation in Board of Supervisors meetings to include in-person participation and take action as appropriate.
Yes, good morning, Chair, members of the board. Kevin Mallon, Yuba County Administrator. So I want to start off by providing a little background and actually a couple thank yous. Our clerk of the board's office, Rochelle and Mary, have been working diligently for months now with our IT team and with outside vendors to update the software and hardware in our board chambers so that we could get to this point where we could have a discussion about being able to expand the options for public participation, not only during this pandemic, but hopefully into the future as well, so that we'll have the technical capabilities. So they're in the final stages of testing on those capabilities, and it appears that our board chambers are going to be in a position where you'll be able to simultaneously have in-person interactions and participation, and also have virtual participation via Zoom or another platform similar to Zoom. And so that's a great milestone for us to be able to be at that point. And so that leads to our discussion this morning about how to move forward with, if the board chooses to, under what circumstances do we move forward and have this simultaneous interaction. It does, that having both formats at the same time definitely increases the work for our clerk of the board's office, because they'll be managing both in-person and virtual simultaneously, but it appears they're up to the challenge and ready. But as far as how we transition, in my staff report that I presented to the board, I had a couple of recommendations that I thought I'd go over with the board before I open it up to board discussion. One has to do, and this is tied to the way we're situated in the pandemic at this point in time. I'd recommend limiting the in-person capacity within the board chambers itself. My recommendation is that we start with a seating capacity for the audience of 25 members. The board chambers at full capacity can handle 100 people seated. That's our typical format in there. But during this initial stage, I'd recommend we go with a 25 seat arrangement, and that'll provide the spacing we need to meet current requirements. The other would be board member attendance. I think it'd be good for the board to kind of talk through how you'd like to handle it, at least in the near term, and then possibly how you want to handle it in the future. But as I mentioned, we should have a board chambers that can handle the capability of board members being mixed, both in person and virtual, participating in the meeting. The other would be staff member attendance in the meeting. My same thing, they'd be able to attend virtual and in person. My recommendation would be that you limit staff in person initially in order to ensure you have plenty of capacity in the chambers for members of the public to participate in person if they so choose. And then finally, the in-person participation itself, what I would recommend initially is that for all those that are participating in person within the board chambers, that would be board members, staff, and public, that facial coverings be worn at all times. And if any of those three categories aren't able to wear a facial covering in the board chambers, while in the board chambers, there's always the alternative of stepping out and connecting via Zoom to the meeting without a facial covering. So that's how I'd like to kick it off, and more than happy to walk through this with the board and members of the public and figure out how we can have both in person and Zoom at the same time on future board meetings. All right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kevin. So I'm going to open it up to the board at this point for questions, comments.
Through the chair. Does this protocols change if we drop down to the red tier?
So my recommendation, if I could through the chair, my recommendation would be that we confer with the health officer as we add more capacity within the chambers. But this wasn't the 25 persons in the board chambers was anticipating that we would be in the red tier by the time the next board meeting occurred, which would be April 13th is our next regularly scheduled board meeting.
Okay. And the wearing the masks and spacing for the board. I don't think we're spaced far enough apart. So if we're going to be in person, we'll be wearing masks. Is that right?
That's correct. So regardless of your spacing within the chambers, you're sharing the same airspace, and the current state guidance on that is that when people are in the same airspace, they have a facial covering on at all time.
Okay, thanks. And I suppose it doesn't matter if you've been vaccinated or not.
That's correct. That'll evolve as well. So these are my initial recommendations. As the state guidance and CDC guidance changes, obviously we'll be able to adapt as well.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Additional board comments?
One of the other items that I would comment on that I certainly believe it's an asset for board members occasionally that may not either feel well or have a cold or some issue that allows them to participate in the board meeting that typically if they wouldn't and couldn't come to a board meeting still could participate from a remote. I believe that is a great asset for the community to do that. So I really like that piece of the puzzle.
Okay, additional board comments? Okay, I'll make one before we open it up to public comment. I just want to thank staff for all of their effort on this. I know this is something we've been working on, as Kevin said, for months to get the technology in place to do this. I do think it's important, not only as we kind of hopefully wrap up this pandemic, but even moving forward, that we be able to support both of these mechanisms. Some public, it's more convenient for them to be in person. I certainly enjoy the board members meeting in person when we can, and hearing from the public that's able to make it there and interested in attending in person. But I think we have received a lot of feedback that you know, the option to attend via Zoom is certainly more accessible for some members of the community. And so it's great to be able to keep that option there. And as Supervisor Fletcher mentioned, with respect to board members, you know, I anticipate the desire will be for board members to be there most of the time in person, but there are those occasions right now where maybe we're out of town on county business or some other reason. And right now we're unable to really participate. And this will enable that to occur. So I'm very excited about that, being able to have more participation from the board members as well as from the public. So with that, I will open it up to public comment. I know we have several. Mary, if we can start with Miss Allen.
Hi, good morning, gentlemen. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to comment on this agenda item. I wanted to thank you guys for putting this on the agenda, even though I don't think that this should ever have been an issue to start with. I mean, the California Constitution Article 1 is, I mean, it's very straightforward. The Brown Act is very straightforward. People have the right to confront their elected officials with grievances in the community. And the fact that you guys have limited that it's appalling. And it has been your responsibility to uphold that, and you have not done that. I also want to mention that, you know, Administrator Mallon's comments about what should be allowed and what should not be allowed, I believe that those are incorrect and that those limit public participation as much as only having a Zoom conversation. I think that if people are worried about the chances of catching a virus with a 99 point something % recovery rate, then those people should stay home. And I don't think that we need to dictate rules based on something so arbitrary and silly. I think the fact that that is even a discussion is completely ridiculous. You guys aren't using common sense and you're not supporting our liberty. The real danger is that you guys are not supporting liberty. You are not upholding your oath of office to the Constitution and to defend the people who live here, who have the right to come to a public meeting and redress their grievances with you in person. That is fundamental to the rights of living here in America, in California. We have those rights, and you gentlemen are playing with it. And it's ridiculous. It's been over a year since we've been in the state of emergency over a flu virus. And it's had enough time, gentlemen. So please, I really appreciate you guys putting this on the agenda. I would ask that you pass it today, but I would ask that you would change these regulations and not limit people to their public comment to in person, to have it be contingent upon certain medical procedures and practices and that sort. So please consider that today when you pass this. Thank you.
Thank
To
you.
the chair, would it be possible for county council to let people know that we've looked into what we can actually do? The most important thing I've learned is a serenity prayer. Learn what you can change, learn what you can't change. And I think that county council could elaborate on why we have to do certain things. Because we don't do it because we want to take your liberties away.
I don't think that is.
Why don't you let county council answer the question first, please?
Oh, okay, I would love to, and then I would love to speak again.
Thank
if
you.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Miss Allen, just to get heads up, you will not be able to speak again.
If we could, why don't we, through the chair, if you would allow me, why don't we allow Ms. Allen to complete whatever statement she would like to make? It's the time for members of the public to comment upon the agenda item. And then have Kimberly complete her comments. At that point, I will be happy to address Supervisor Vasquez's question. And I believe the same issue will arise in regards to the next agenda item as well. So I'll give a brief intro there, but my suggestion would be to complete public comment, then bring the matter back to the board, and I'll be happy to answer any questions of the board.
Okay. Miss Allen, do you have anything additional to say?
Well, I would have liked to hear what the council had to say to comment on that, but to be honest, it's in your power, and I'm really tired of hearing the same comments from you. Oh, we can't do, it's not up to us, it's up to the state, it's not up to us. You have a county emergency here in Yuba County. You have a local health officer who works for you, who created these mandates. You gentlemen are in charge of this county, and I don't want to hear you guys say there's nothing we can do about it, because there's no point for you to even work there then. If you can't do anything to support support us and to protect us, you shouldn't be county representatives. You shouldn't have this job. And that's why I just think it's laughable that there's nothing you can do. Then you should quit because you are not serving this county.
Okay, thank you.
Woo!
Mary, we can move on to the box labeled Kimberly. I don't believe it's Kimberly, but they can introduce themselves again.
Hello, this is Rebecca Carlson. And yes, it is, I'm using Kimberly's phone because this whole Zoom thing, first of all, everything that Courtney was saying was muffled and all this wind. We're out here talking to our phones. This is ridiculous. How many of you gentlemen wear a mask when you're having sex with your wife? Do you do that? I'm just asking, let's talk practical here. Like we are human beings and our freedom comes from God. It's our endowed rights, and these meetings should be open because the people you say you serve are pissed. I am mad as hell. And forgive me for not coming out here after the first 15 days. Never in the history of the world have healthy humans been locked up. Never. This is a lie. It's a farce. It's communism. And I will continue to put the pressure on. And you work for us. And just like Gavin Newsom can be recalled, you guys can be recalled. And also, I 100% agree with Courtney. If you can't change anything, then what are you doing? What do you even do for your jobs? If you just have to bow down to a dictator, then you're just bowing down to the king. You're just a subservient. And we are not your peasants that you come and take money from and just use it however you want. You work for us. We are Americans. We live in America. Go back to the Constitution. Open up this meeting. I will never wear a mask. I will not wear a mask. Show me any scientific study where it actually is effective. Masks are effective. And I'll show you just as many that say that they aren't. So this is a bunch of baloney. You need to open up and stop infringing upon my rights, the county's rights, the people of this county. That's it.
Thank you. Mary, can we have Donna speak next, please?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Why is that doing that?
Someone near you probably needs to use
Sorry about
their
that.
volume. No problem.
Boy, I was next to the speaker. I guess I learned not to do that again. Anyway, my name's Donna Wahlberg. Hello. And I feel very passionately about this not opening up and the closing of businesses, the whole thing based on something, a so-called pandemic that is not supported by any scientific evidence whatsoever. Even Fauci, I don't know if you saw a recent interview with him, but he even said that there's no scientific evidence. Even the vaccine that people are taking is not guaranteed or will not. It's not a typical vaccine. It will not stop someone from getting the virus. It will not stop someone from spreading the virus. This whole thing is a farce. This is a county. You are responsible for the citizens in Yuba County. You are our representatives, and we expect you to stand up for us and stand up for our constitutional rights. You took that oath of office, and I so appreciate that you have this on the agenda today to open up. And I agree. I like the proposal that it be open to the public physically and also via Zoom. I hope if you do that, that there's also the ability for people to comment, as I'm doing right now on the Zoom as well as in person. But one big objection I have is saying that masks would be mandatory if we are to come in physically, because that is discrimination against me. It is a violation of my constitutional right, my sovereignty over my body. I cannot wear a mask. I will not wear a mask because it is damaging to my health. Our bodies are a beautiful thing. Our bodies have mechanisms to take care of things that are not good for it. In fact, even like COVID or a flu, it's actually a good thing when we get sick, because what that means is our body is doing what it needs to do to reject and dispel something that it needs to get out of it that's not healthy for it. Our bodies are made to exhale carbon dioxide. When we wear a mask, we're sucking all that carbon dioxide back in, and it is unhealthy. It can affect our thinking. It can damage our organs over long-term use. It can cause permanent organ damage and failure. It is not healthy, and there's no reason for it. So I'm please asking you, open up and eliminate the mandatory request or order to wear masks. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have a public comment next from Genesis.
Yeah, I want to first thank you for putting this item on the agenda. And I want to thank personally Supervisor Vasquez for making the motion to do that. And I want to say that also I agree with having it on virtually and in person as well. I think that gives everyone the most opportunity to participate in the public process, however they see fit, however they want to. And it is a right to be in that building. It is a right for us to address you in person, face to face. And that is not contingent on our choices, what we make, the choices that we make with our personal health. As far as just as Donna was just saying, you know, these masks are dangerous. It's dangerous to wear that on your face and limit your breathing capacity by 19%. That does not have no consequences. That does have consequences. And I do not expect that my right to attend the meeting in person will be subject to your medical recommendation. Are you a doctor? Are you able to make a recommendation? Isn't that between me and my doctor to decide what's best for me and my health? If I pass out or someone passes out in that room, do you realize that you will be held personally responsible? I want that on the record. You, as the supervisors, will be held personally responsible if someone passes out from a mask, wearing a mask in that building. So definitely no masks. And the 25% capacity, I think, is not needed as well. This thing, you know, 2020 was a big year for us. We went through a lot. It's over now. It's over. Let's just face the facts. This is over. Everything is fine. We have a alleged virus, which has a 99-point-something% survival rate, 99.3 I hear here in Yuba County. And it's time to go back. It's time to address you in person. It's time to be there in the building, and it's time to be normal again. It's time to be humans, face-to-face contact, face-to-face, my whole face to your whole face. You choose what you want to do with your face. I'll choose what I want to do with mine. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, I see iPhone 530632.
Hello. This is Liz Cervantes. How's everybody this morning?
Good morning, Liz.
I'm here from Sutter County. I think all of you know that I am an activist for the region, not just Sutter County. So Tuesdays are always fun because those are big meeting days, right? The supervisors, you guys at 9 and then Sutter County at 3. But something standing out here, your public is out here. And, you know, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be writing a property tax bill for my house in Sutter County. And I wonder if the assessor's office is not going to let me in because I don't have a mask or they can't take my temperature, but they want my check. Our liberties are dwindling. You guys are patriots. Nobody's accusing you of anything different. If you don't know what your power is as a supervisor, I suggest you become well versed on it. You do not have to accept the staff report. You don't have to. You do not have to accept county council. You can do it yourself. Do the right thing. That's all we're asking for. We are your peers. We're friends. We're standing out here while you guys are in there dictating what we're supposed to do. I'm looking at Save Mart right now, and I can walk into Save Mart without a mask. But if I go to Tracy's Diner next door, I got to have my temperature taken and a mask. Who makes those rules? Get rid of Dr. Lou. She sucks. I'm sick of her. She should be dealing with gonorrhea, syphilis, AIDS, not this, not COVID. She is not even a medical doctor. Can somebody tell me, is she a medical doctor? She's not? Oh, see, even the people out here standing out here because the doors are locked, we're answering our own questions that you guys should be answering. Do you find a problem with that? Do you even feel the least bit remorseful that we're standing out here? I mean, come on, let us in. We're healthy. Let us in. That's all we're asking for. For the next agenda item, can you open the front door and let us in? I can't see anybody's face. I actually can see Gary's face, but that's it. Gary, can you open the door for the next agenda item?
No,
If
we
you vote
cannot.
on this, if you vote on this, can you open the door?
Yes.
That'll be the conclusion of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this point, I do not see any additional public comment. Is there any additional public comment? Okay, if not, we will return it to the board. For comment, I guess I would just say I appreciate all the public who came today to speak and share their opinion. Like I said, I also appreciate the time staff has been working on this. And I do know and do believe that the staff recommendation is in line with public health requirements. So anyway, I will accept a motion at this time or additional board comment.
I move that we open the meetings back up.
Supervisor, if you're just to confirm, is that beginning with our next meeting?
Correct.
Okay.
I don't believe anyone else. I don't think. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, excuse me. Was Mike going to make a comment?
Oh.
If you desire, I'll be happy to address the issue. Yes.
Sure, please do.
Okay, thank you. And this is in response to the questions raised by Supervisor Vasquez, and he is correct. And I think I should begin by saying it doesn't matter who's sitting in your seats as supervisors. It's the powers vested to a county are not personal to any individual supervisor. They are the powers that are vested to the county, delegated to the county by the state. All county power is delegated to the county by the state. And the California Supreme Court, they're the guys that decide what's constitutional and what is not constitutional. And they have made clear time and again, and in fact, in the staff report for the next item, you'll see I've cited Younger versus Board of Supervisors, an appellate court decision, just going through what the California courts have routinely held. And that is very simply that counties constitute merely political subdivisions of the state. They have independently only such legislative authority that has been expressly conferred by the Constitution and the laws of the state. If the latter sources are silent in regard to the delegation of such authority, the authority must rest with the legislature. What the court is saying is we have the power that the state gives us. That's all. The counties do have some, there was talk of home rule ordinances. It truly, the home rule ordinance in the legal sense doesn't really exist. The concept of home rule is found in the California Constitution, so it is authority granted to counties. However, it is limited authority. It's Article 11, if anybody wants to look it up. Article 11 of the Constitution And it speaks to the ability of counties to adopt a charter. Now, it's not an easy process, and it doesn't give you unfettered authority. The Constitution itself limits the types of things that a county can include in a charter. Not among such grant of authority is the authority to disregard state law. In fact, even if this board felt that what the state legislature and the governor have done is unconstitutional, and I am not in any way deriding anyone's passion or beliefs in that regard. I am simply stating the legal duties of this board, and that seems to be something under scrutiny, is the duty of this board. And it is the duty it is the duty of the board to follow state law until such time as there is a judicial determination that that state law is unconstitutional. And that's Lockyer versus City and County of San Francisco. That's our California Supreme Court. In 2004, they made it clear that as government officials, you must follow that law unless and until a court has determined it to be unconstitutional. Not any individual, not a personal belief. The board does have the authority to express its feelings regarding their disagreement with the state law, and I do believe this board has done that. With our next item, you'll see the Healthy Communities Resolution, where this board again went to the state and said, allow local control. We have just, and I know with the board and with Dr. Liu, have gone back at the state on the vaccine allocation. Again, arguing with the state to allow local control. And we did, in fact, gain a small victory, a victory, but a small one, to allow greater local control in the vaccine allocation. But again, there are simply, I think the expectations placed upon the board exceed the legal authority of the board. And I'll be happy to answer any other questions in that regard.
Thank you, Council. Additional comments from the board?
Through the chair.
Yes.
Has there been a recent decision as far as the review of the lawsuit from Assemblyman Gallagher against Gavin Newsom as far as his emergency declarations and powers?
Supervisor Vasquez, no, that the last word from the Court of Appeal, my understanding is all briefing is in on that, and they're waiting for a hearing date for argument. The last action of the Court of Appeal was to stay the effectiveness of the Superior Court decision. So in essence, that decision by the Superior Court in Sutter County is on hold. So you return to the status quo that existed before the stay on that decision in Superior Court. So we're waiting. There are cases working their way through. I'm sure you're all aware of some of them. There was a recent decision out of San Diego, I believe, at the trial court level, where the return to school restrictions imposed by the governor were challenged, and the court sustained a temporary restraining order preventing the enforcement. Now that's only effective in LA County. It's going to be appealed, and the appellate court will deal with that issue. But the lawsuits continue to come fast and furious, and that truly is the remedy for those that are impacted by the restrictions being placed by the governor and the state legislature.
Okay. there were some figures used by some of the individuals on public comment. I've done this before, and 98.7% of all deaths to COVID are within the age group of 35 to 80 plus. We have our schools shut down, yet there is no in the entire state of California for last year. This is as of March 17th, 2021. There is no, it's less than 1% of children have deaths from 0 to 17. And yet we shut down the entire state. And I'm just, we're big boys, we're adults. We should be allowed to make decisions as adults, not children. I'm distressed sometimes that the governor seems to think he can tell us all to sit in our homes and have a mask, and I refuse to adhere to that. And churches, you can't. I think we've done this before. I go to my church, and I will continue to do so unless they haul me off. And I think we need to be treated as adults instead of children here. That's just one man's opinion, and you and I've been talking about that for a year. They're right, and they should be treated like adults. So I'm gonna leave it at that.
And Supervisor Vasquez, please do not take my comments as being supportive of any action that the governor has taken. That was not my intent. I am just trying to explain to members of the public primarily. I know you guys know where the lines are as to what you can do, but for members of the public, I sense the frustration, and it shouldn't be focused on this board. It should be focused higher up toward the state. So
okay, well, that in the military they asked you have to obey legal orders. Key word there, legal. And in Germany they decided that you had to obey the orders regardless, and that's to the degree this governor has carried the state. And I think we need to leave this up to adults, and you make your choice, because it's all based on science. Well, it used to be months ago, but we don't have science to justify shutting down the entire economy, a 5th largest economy in the world, and he decides it needs to go away. All right, I've put away my soapbox and leave, but I will do what I think is right.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And just one brief thing. The question was asked whether Dr. Liu was a medical doctor. The answer is yes, she is an MD. She's board certified in internal medicine. So yeah, she is an MD.
So through the chair, Michael, could you tell me, I disagree with the way the state of California is spending the budget. And so if this board decided that we are going to not accept that budget, can we pass a resolution that changes the state mandate, how the budget is spent?
Could you pass that resolution? Yes, sir, you could pass that resolution. Is it worth the paper that it's written on? No, it really isn't. You can certainly, as I said, this board can certainly express, and has on more than one occasion. I've sat through many a meeting where we have letters, resolutions on the agenda to go directly to the state saying, we think you're wrong, what you're doing is wrong, and here's why. And this board always has that authority.
And so if we went to the state of California and said, we are emancipated, we are no longer part of the state, we are the state of Jefferson, we will not listen nor recognize your authority, does that carry any weight?
From a legal standpoint, no. We, as I said, those disputes would have to be resolved in a court of competent jurisdiction, and we're seeing that play out.
So what you're telling me is the state of California is established through a long tradition of state laws that are enforced through the courts, and we're in that same scenario today. Is that about the crux of it?
Yes, it is. There are challenges to the extent of the state authority being made. We've seen it now. We've seen it before. I'm sure you all remember SB 54, the sanctuary state legislation, where there were quite a few lawsuits. Ultimately, one filed by the United States itself against California over that legislation. And you saw trial courts going different ways. One of the victories heralded was the city of Long Beach said, we're a charter city, we don't have to follow that law. And the trial court said, you're right, you don't have to follow that law. You're a charter city, you have control of your police chief. And the Court of Appeals said, not so fast, and reversed the trial court. So we're seeing a lot of that right now. And the bottom line is the state, we are a political subdivision of the state. We are not independent of the state, but we wish that we were. We think we have some really good ideas as to how this jurisdiction should run, but we are constrained by that stark reality.
So one of the most important legislative acts probably going on at the moment is a legislative challenge by Assemblyman Gallagher to propose to the governor and limit his authority based on the way they interpret the Constitution. Is that probably correct?
Yeah, yes, I think not just his interpretation of the Constitution, but the extent of the authority granted to him by the Emergency Services Act. And that's a fair fight. You know, I think reasonable people can disagree on the extent of the governor's authority. I watched the arguments at the Superior Court. I was impressed by Mr. Kiley and Mr. Gallagher. I thought they did a good job presenting their positions, as did the judge apparently. So we'll see if that carries the day in the appellate court, and if it does, well then you know, it'll be brought back to this board to explain the new scope of the board's authority under these orders.
So probably one of the most important piece of legislation that's ongoing right now that will help design the future of California, the authority of the governor and the power within each county.
That would be, yes.
Very good. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So I had a first from Supervisor Fuhrer. I can't recall if we had a second or not.
So I believe this is related to the discussion and the guidelines that were submitted by Kevin Mellon. Is that correct?
That is correct. So we're talking about the motion is to related to opening the meeting at our next meeting, which I believe is April 13th. So I have a first and a second. Are there any additional board comments? The second was Andy, by the way, in case you didn't get it, Mary.
Always get in there.
If I could, through the chair, I just wanted to make sure we're clear on the motion. Is the motion to accept the staff's recommendations on how we're going to operationalize the change? As I presented early on in this discussion, we have the technology available to have both in-person and Zoom at the same time. Now, as we operationalize that, how are we going to do that? And so staff made some recommendations in the staff report. And I just want to make sure in the motion that it's clear. Or is the board concurring with the recommendations or making any amendments to the recommendations?
The motion is to open the meetings as hybrid.
Yes, on the second.
As proposed, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. That was my understanding. Okay.
And
We
that's going to start with the next meeting, right?
Yes, assuming it passes, that'd be April 13th.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Vasquez,
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer,
Absolutely.
Supervisor Fuhr,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford,
Yes.
Supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, now moving on to item 90, 2021, County Administrator, discuss Yuba Healthy Communities Resolution and consider whether additional actions are needed due to the state's response to COVID-19. Kevin Mallon?
Yes, good morning, Chair, members of the board. County Council Chikazi will probably add on to this conversation as well. And our previous item kind of somewhat bled into the conversation on this, but I'll highlight what we went over in the staff report. So the board, January 26th of this year, adopted a resolution titled Resolution Supporting Healthy Communities. By way of background, it was a resolution effort that was coordinated with multiple counties in the state and with Assemblyman Gallagher, Senator Nielsen, et cetera. And it was a way for counties to kind of raise their voice to the state on their concerns and their desire, the county's desire to have more local control as we work through the pandemic. So that resolution was attached to the staff report by way of background. And I thought that would be a good starting point as far as a discussion, whether updates to that resolution are necessary considering the current state we are in. And then also by way of background, and this was discussed in the previous item, that Yuba County is currently a general law county. There are options to counties, and maybe so that I don't butcher it, I'm gonna let Mike Chikazi walk the board through the options that counties have in regards to doing something that's different than the standards that are under what general law counties can do. So, Mr. Chikazi.
Here we go. Thank you, Mr. Mallon. And I'll try to be brief because most of what I have to say was said in regards to the last item. And we begin again with the basic understanding that counties are political subdivisions of the state. Any authority we have is delegated to us from the state, either through the Constitution or through state legislation. We do not have the authority to pass ordinances that are, ordinances that are in conflict with state law. We can pass them, they're of no legal force and effect. The option for home rule, as it's referred to, really it grows out of primarily cities. And the reason that is the case is because cities are separate from the state. They are municipal corporations. They are not a political subdivision of the state. So if you think about it in very simple terms, counties can do only what the state says we can do. Cities can do anything other than what the state says they can't do. So if there's nothing to say the city can't do it, then the city can do it. If there is nothing to say that the county can do it, then the county cannot do it. There must be legislative authority for the county to take an action. So one of the ways under the Constitution, the California Constitution, that a county can control certain aspects of its organization is through a charter. However, as I mentioned earlier, that authority is limited. And in particular, when you look at the provision, it limits basically the internal operations of the county. So the charter provisions that we're allowed to adopt would relate to the election, compensation, terms, removal, and salary governing board. So you could put that in your charter. You could do the same thing for the election or appointment of certain government officials other than sheriff or district attorney. Those two constitutionally are required to be by election. But for your others, you can make them appointed offices if you have a charter. I'm sorry, the assessor, that's the other one you can't touch. How those three got together, I don't know, but the assessor had a good lobby and said, no, we need to be elected. They won out, the Constitution so reads, and that's what we'll follow. The other thing a charter can do is it can speak to the consolidation and segregation of county offices. We have a clerk recorder. So your charter could say, yes, we will have a clerk recorder. So those are the internal organizational things that you can include in a charter. We could not go out today and adopt a charter that says state law will have no force and effect within the jurisdictional boundaries of Yuba County. No, we could, again, it would be of no legal force and effect. It doesn't work. As I pointed out in the Younger case, which is cited in there, it was a charter county. And at the time, the state law did not allow the term limits for board members. It does now, but at that time it did not. Through their charter, that county attempted to impose term limits, and one of the board members said, oh, no, you're not. You can't do that. And in Younger, the court looked to the Constitution and said, no, even a charter county cannot do that which has not been granted to it. So again, we have restrictions on how far we can go. The board is always free to pass a resolution, as they did the Healthy Communities resolution, to express their displeasure and encourage the state to take a different path. We work through other means as well. When something will come up from the state, staff has contacts at state departments as well, and we reach out to them. The County Council Association has been extremely active in trying to push back and gain clarity on these state orders throughout the pandemic. But at the end of the day, we are obligated to follow state law, regardless of what charter provisions we include. The upside of a charter is you have some control over your internal operations. The downside of a charter, it is very difficult to amend or change a charter. It must be by a vote of the people, so you've got to have an election. Typically, I came from a charter county. There was a charter review commission, so every 5 years, or not more than every 5 years, the charter commission would get together, go through the charter, and start recommending changes. Those changes or recommendations would come to the board. Then it would go out to a vote of the people. Often, well, the one I can remember in particular was a charter provision that was made obsolete by state law, because the other limitation is the state, as I said, delegates authority to us. The state can also take that back. So if we were to pass a charter that says, the treasurer tax collector shall be appointed, and state law changes, the state constitution changes to say treasurer tax collector must be elected, well, then our charter provision would be obsolete. It would be superseded. The provisions of the charter cannot conflict with state law. So while it does give you some internal operation control, you still can't conflict with state law. You'll see the majority of counties in California, vast majority, are general law counties. even some of the charter counties, if you look at their charters will address one or two things, and then will say, and we follow, general law for all other matters. So they're not as expansive as the Constitution itself, though they have been described as the Constitution of the county. I'm happy to answer any questions again about the limits on our authority, the scope of our authority, and the interplay with the relationship with the state.
Questions and comments from, Kevin, looks like you have something to say.
I just wanted to kind of wrap the conversation back around to the intent here. We wanted to make sure Mr. Chikazi gave a little background on general law versus charter, and really talk through what I think was precipitating this conversation was the displeasure with what's happening at the state and what can the county do about it. And so by way of example, I attached the most recent resolution the board had on this topic that went to the state as part of a coordinated effort, as I mentioned back in January, and really wanted to open up for discussion with the board. Is there a future resolution that the board would like staff to prepare, or other actions that board would like to direct staff to do on this topic?
Bring it back to the board for questions and comments before we go to public comment.
Through the chair, I guess my only question is, what is the benefit and what is the cost? What do we gain from doing that?
From a charter, is that the question, Supervisor Fletcher?
Yes.
As I said, what you gain is a greater control on that internal operation, the appointment, removal of officials, the board. That's really the gist of it. By way of, I can give you an example, and again, I get nervous up here when I start saying, well, you can do this to an elected official, because I'm not suggesting that you do any such thing. However, in order to answer the question, there is a case that was very interesting. Some would say a little disturbing, but be that as it may, a case Penrod, I believe it was versus County of San Bernardino. And in that case, the county adopted a charter provision that allowed the removal of an elected official by a 4/5 vote of the board after providing an opportunity for a hearing by that elected official where they could come in and defend themselves. The sheriff there challenged it and said, you can't do that. The Constitution says I'm elected. And there, the court held in Penrod that the Constitution says that through a charter, a county can control the method of appointment or removal of an elected official. And so the court upheld that charter provision. It had to be by a 4/5 vote. How they came to that isn't really clear, but they said it had to be by a 4/5 vote, and then you could remove that elected official. As I said, I am not encouraging anything like that. So Sheriff Anderson, you don't need to call me. I'm not suggesting that. It's just a clear example of the type of authority that a charter would give you. What it would not give you is the authority to ignore the state's public health orders. It just doesn't. And I would note there was Placer County, who I believe is a charter county as well. Even in their resolution that they passed, that a lot of people point to and say, hey, you got to do what Placer did. They were very clear that be it resolved by the Board of Supervisors, County of Placer, State of California, that the California state of emergency and the state's stay-at-home requirements and other health requirements as directed in Gubernatorial Executive Order N 3320 and subsequent executive orders or statutes, and all California Department of Public Health orders, directives, and guidance remain in effect. That was, I mean, and that's what we're talking about, really. We're all upset about the way the state is treating the populace and counties in general is what we are concerned about primarily, but we're limited in what we can do in that regard.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, not hearing any additional board comment at this time. We'll open it up for public comment, and we'll start with Donna.
Hello. Yes, I just had exception with County Council's comment that you have to follow state law. And I understand, that there are state laws, and initially, they are on its face a law that needs to be followed, but it's your job to look at that, look at whether it's constitutional, listen to your constituents. If it's not, then do something about it. And if that means filing an injunction with the court to determine, put a stay on that order, and then determine, until there's a full hearing and it can be determined whether or not that law is unconstitutional or not, then that's what must be done. We cannot continue to just blindly assume that any laws that are mandated by the state are constitutional and that we should just follow them. And that's the problem that's going on in this entire country today. And we need to stop it. We need to always look at the Constitution. That is our founding documents. That is the basis of our whole country and our republic and our freedoms and our constitutional rights and our God-given rights. And so, for too long now, people have ignored the Constitution. For too long, it's not been taught in our schools. People don't even know what their rights are. It's up to you. You've taken a constitutional oath, and every time you stand up for our constitutional rights, you are educating your constituents and you are protecting and defending our freedom. And I just want to tell you, I really appreciate all of you. I appreciate your voice, especially Mr. Vasquez, and I appreciate all of you for voting to open up the next meeting. But anyway, don't just always blindly follow state law. Question authority and do something about it if it's not constitutional. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Great, thank you. Next up is Miss Allen.
Hi, gentlemen. Thank you again. I just want to reiterate what Donna said. Thank you guys for voting to open up the meetings. That means a lot. I wanted to talk about this issue because, your council talked a lot about the fact that we have to follow state law. And, the thing is that our state assemblymen and our state senator are directly trying to fight all of the state legislature to open up the state. And to open up the counties. And, we don't have representation in the state legislature. They're completely overrun by the Democrats. And if we only listen to what the state said, we would not be represented at all. And that is not the way our government is supposed to function. I do think a charter county would help us. And I would argue that, the reason why, let's say, Placer hasn't been successful lately in opening up their county against the state mandates is that their supervisors are not taking advantage of their county, of their charter county. I would say that it has a lot more to do with what you gentlemen choose to do with it than actually the law. And your council didn't mention Section 7 of Article 11 about charter counties, which states that the county or city may make and enforce within its limits all local police, sanitary, and other ordinances and regulations not in conflict with general laws of the state. And I would say that you know, when it comes to election law and things like that, those are general laws. But as far as what the way we want to go about COVID-19 in our businesses and the local policy that we want to enact here, I would say that's completely within our jurisdiction. I would say when it comes to whether or not we're letting boys join girls sports teams or all of that type of stuff, I would say that is definitely within our jurisdiction. You know, these types of laws about how we want to live, I do think we have the jurisdiction and authority over. And I would ask you guys to step up and support us because, like I said, we do not have representation in the state. You gentlemen are our best bet. And what you guys are going to do is what we're going to live with. I would also say that if you guys enacted a charter saying that we're no longer enforcing any mandate, there are recommendations, and whether you follow them or not, that's your choice. You guys could not have to deal with Cal OSHA fines because it's our local law here. I would say that's a great way to help your local businesses out from avoiding fines is by saying something like that. And I'd also like to mention that in the governor's state of emergency declaration number 8, it states that the state emergency will end when local officials deem it's time to end. And so I would say that the governor is giving you authority to end the state of emergency. So I hope that you guys recognize your power and your authority and your responsibility over this county and make the right choices and make choices to help better your community. Yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you, Miss Allen. Okay, next up we have Genesis.
Yeah, I want to add to, first of all, thank you for opening up the meeting. And
oops. Need to unmute Genesis.
Okay, I was talking all that time. That's what happens on Zoom. But okay, I'll start over. I appreciate you opening up the meeting, first of all. And then as far as the charter county goes, I don't hear a downside here. You know, there's a lot of potential upside that I'm hearing, but not a lot of downside. So, you know, what is the harm of taking this route, which we have set forth by the Constitution, and seeing what we can get done here? Because, you know, we are not LA County here. We are not San Francisco. You know, we are a small, tight-knit community, and we have our own needs and our own, we know our community better than they do in Sacramento. So it's important for us to exercise the things that Courtney was talking about, you know, with boys being able to be in girls' sports and this stuff with COVID-19 and opening up our businesses and having a say, having a voice. That's the most important thing for a small community like ours, is to have that voice, to have our own autonomy. And honestly, if we can't do that, what good are we here? What good are you here as supervisors if you don't have a say? So this is, you know, this item before you now is a chance to give your constituents, we the people, a say as voiced by you. So if you don't have a say, then what good are you there? So I would say, you know, with my voice that I'm using right now, please pass this. Let's take this route, become a charter county, and see what we can get done. And who knows what we're going to encounter along the way. I know your council is saying many things to try to scare you and say that this isn't something that's going to be worth it. But how do we know until we get into it? How do we know until we start? How do we know until we take that first step? So I am imploring you to take that first step today with us, we the people, right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment on this item? Okay, I do not see any, so we will return it to the board. And I guess I'll make the first comment. Certainly, you know, I think this board has shown with our existing resolution that we want local control. We would like to do things differently than the state does. Really appreciate council's explanation about the difference between a county and a city. I did know that we had to follow state law, but I didn't know that that cities had a little bit more freedom with respect to what they can do and not do, because we are a subdivision of the state and they are not. So that's a very interesting thing right there. I also appreciate that really throughout the majority of this pandemic, this county's approach to our businesses and state regulations has been one of an educational and supportive approach. We've worked really hard to make sure that our businesses are aware of the state regulations, and we've worked really hard to help them to comply with those. Early on, I think we did see what happens when we tried to tell our businesses something a little different than the state. Early on in the pandemic, when the county chose to remove various orders that we had locally and encourage our businesses to open back up. Unfortunately, those businesses were visited by state regulatory agencies. And so I know, for one, I've been very careful to communicate to businesses that we are taking an educational approach, but I have not tried to encourage them to violate state law because I do not want to be responsible when the state regulatory agencies show up and fine them. And so anyway, just my comment on that, and any other board members have comments related to this item?
Through the chair, I also would like to make it very clear to the public that our county council is not here to scare the board nor the public. Our county council works for and the benefit of not only the Board of Supervisors, but the public at large. I have called him on repeated issues throughout the county over the years and asked for an opinion based on legal and what makes the most sense. I can tell you he is a very balanced individual to provide knowledge to the board and to the public. So to make that statement clearly is not the case and not true. It is all about the law. Whether the law makes sense or not, I've been encountered in the law. I've been in the law and law enforcement for enough years to understand that the law doesn't have to make sense. It's just the law. So we rely a great deal on our county council to help the board understand the situation of the law and how it applies to the county and the public. Just a comment.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else from the board on this item?
Don't we have a motion?
We have the opportunity to make a motion if there's something that the board would like to direct related to this item. Otherwise, it's just a discussion.
All right.
Okay. So hearing nothing, I know we have two more items. I'm not sure how long they're going to take before we get to closed session. Is the board interested in a little break, or we want to wait till closed session to do that? Just give me a thumbs up if you want a break. If not, we'll press forward. Okay, looks like we're doing good. So we will move on to item 92, 2021. County Administrator, discuss allowing special districts within Yuba County to incorporate the county seal into their district seal and take action as appropriate.
Yes, good morning, Chair, members of the board, Kevin Mallon, Yuba County Administrator. So there's always firsts, and surprisingly, this was a first for us as well. I was approached by one of our fire districts with the question, can they incorporate the government seal of Yuba County into their own special district seal? And so I conferred with County Council. We do not have policy and procedure in place for that type of a use, which leads me to believe that it hasn't been asked in the past, because usually there's a rule for everything, and the rule is because somebody asked in the past, right? So that's why I'm before the board today is to talk through the request from the special district, and if it makes sense, we have a recommendation to move, if we move forward, that we would need to establish a procedure to allow it in the future. I do, by way of background, I want to point out to the board that we received a public comment via email yesterday from Charles Sharp. That public comment kind of highlighted one of the concerns I had, that there's a potential for misinterpretation from the public when a special district that's distinct and separate from the county has the county seal incorporated into that district seal, because it gives the public the impression that they're somehow a part of the county government and regulated by our Board of Supervisors. And so I just wanted to point that out as an example of one of the concerns that we may have if a special district uses the county government seal for their own, as part of their own seal. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any question the board may have.
Kevin, through the chair, in Los Angeles, there's many districts, and they each have separate badges to separate themselves from the city of Los Angeles in the liability. I think county council will bring that up if they have our county seal on there, then we assume certain liability for that. I wouldn't do that myself. County council, am I wrong in that?
I wouldn't say you're wrong. What I would say is that if someone who feels wronged by that special district using the county seal, they might well confuse the relationship between the county and that special district. Special districts are separate legal entities from the county. They have their own existence. They can sue or be sued. However, in the mind of an individual who sees the fire truck blast through an intersection and hit another car, if they see that seal, could they interpret that as being a Yuba County vehicle? Yes, they could. Could they sue us? Yes, they could. Would they prevail? Highly unlikely. There would have to be something more to impose liability upon the county than simply the existence of that symbol. That is not to say we wouldn't get sued, but I think at the end of the day, we would prevail in that lawsuit.
I think we're opening up Pandora's box for further costs to the county, whether we win or lose.
Through the chair, I would like to make a comment. I'd also like to hear from Jim Mathias and probably Rich Everly on this. Lawsuits happen all the time. Doesn't matter whether you're liable or not liable, you tend to get sued if it's in the county. For what it's worth, I think back 20 years ago, I thought all the fire departments belonged to Yuba County. It wasn't until I became a Board of Supervisors that figured out, oh, there are lots of different entities within the county. And yet everybody had their own identity. The value that I do see in all of this is they are tied to Yuba County. It would be a very interesting experiment of what if all of the fire departments became united and worked together through Yuba County. Now, I don't know what that would look like, but I think you have to start somewhere. I also suspect that through county council's support and input, we could write an agreement that says, guess what? If you run a light and you violate the law, you're going to get sued and you're going to indemnify Yuba County in this whole process. And so it's a matter of putting together that requirement. But in reality, every fire department, so many of the entities within the county belong in the county. They're not other counties, they belong to Yuba County. So with the opportunity for Jim to speak for a few minutes and Rich, if we could allow that, I think it'd be great.
Sure, that'd be fine.
Hi, Jim Mathias here from CAL FIRE. I'm just making sure you can hear me okay before I get going too much.
We can.
Okay, super. All right, I'm Jim Mathias. I'm the North Division Chief for CAL FIRE. And as you know, the entire time of Loma Rica Fire's existence, they've been in a close relationship with CAL FIRE. We share one of the facilities. And so I'm here to speak on behalf of the fire district and on behalf of our unit chief, Brian Estes, who's the fire chief for Loma Rica Browns Valley Fire District. And so how this all started and where it came from, and is there a way I can share my screen so we can kind of see the pictures of what we're talking about while I'm talking? Would you allow that?
If you're a co-host, I think you should have that ability. There we go. It's coming up.
Okay. So if you can see that, on the right-hand side is the existing Loma Rica Browns Valley Fire Rescue Patch. And on the left-hand side is what we're proposing and updating. So the original patch that you see there was developed from the state of California EMSA patch for EMTs. And they just kind of configured that to look similar to that patch because it was a well-known patch. I think it's time for an update, and as you can see, it's quite a striking difference. Unfortunately, the patch we don't have electronically, so we just had to take a picture of one of the best patches that we had. And on the left, it's a markup through an actual person who knows how to do that kind of thing, which is I'm a firefighter and I'm not super great with electronics. So that's the markup there. We were talking for a long time about how we can update the patch, and I went to the volunteers and presented it to the board and asked for ideas. And we've been through several different versions of these patches to see which one would work the best. And when we first thought about it, we thought, what's some traditional things for the fire service? And that would be the Maltese cross that you see there. And then inside the middle, you could put all kinds of different entities. So then we started looking at the name Loma Rica Browns Valley. Loma Rica obviously when you translate that, it comes out to Rich Hill, and Browns Valley is Browns Valley. So we thought, let's find something historical that fits into there. And we really couldn't come up with anything. And then we started looking at the seal of Yuba County. And as Supervisor Fletcher already pointed out, we are intertwined with Yuba County. We're in the middle of it. We're proud of being in the part of Yuba County. And even though we are a special district and we're independent, I really wanted to use that new word or new phrase I learned from your county council today about the political subdivision, that it doesn't apply here. So kind of wish it did a little bit. It would help our cause out a little bit. But what we're seeing here is, I think, just an updated patch that shows our pride in being in the middle of Yuba County. And certainly there isn't an overreach where we're trying to become a subsidiary of Yuba County. It's a good looking seal, and it fit very well into the center of that Maltese cross to represent what we thought was the best of the fire district, and that's being part of Yuba County. I do understand the hesitancy that might open up some litigation, but that's really a far reach for me to think that's going to be a problem. Yes, I agree with Supervisor Fletcher. People are going to sue for whatever reason, but I don't know how successful they would be, and I don't know if that really would happen. Anything's possible, I guess. So what we're coming to you with is this seal here. We're interested in adding that to our patch and updating it and just showing our pride in Yuba County. And I believe one of the district board members is on as well, if he has a comment. But that's all I have for you. That's our ask. It comes from a good place and from pride in Yuba County, and we just want to update our patch. So that's where we're at.
Through the chair, Jim, that's a great design. I changed my mind. That really looks good.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim. I know Rich Eberly would like to speak as well.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, members of the public. My name is Richard Eberly. I'm the Auditor Controller. And I wanted to, I was going to initially speak about something and then might change my mind just a little bit. I appreciate the comments that Supervisor Fletcher made about delineating the relationship between the entities. in addition to the potential legal, I don't know, pitfalls is the right word, but I can't think of another word, so I'll use that one right now. I don't necessarily, I think I agree with the county council that may not be as significant as initially thought. However, there was an instance in the past, it was before my time as the auditor controller, but it did create some significant headache for the county and particularly the auditor controller's office, which is why I appreciate Supervisor Fletcher's desire to specifically delineate or define the relationship. And that instance, what happened was there was a special district in the county that decided to use the county's TIN number or tax identification number and on their transactions, transmissions, and ultimately their payroll. And it ended up causing a significant amount of headache because the IRS came after the county for non-payment of payroll taxes. And so that's an illustration. And it was a kind of a one-time deal, but it'd take a number of years to clean up with the IRS. And so I appreciate Supervisor Fletcher's desire to define and delineate the relationship so that we avoid circumstances, not necessarily from a legal liability standpoint, but there's other entities that could be confused about the relationship. So just make sure that's clear. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Additional board comments? Oh, looks like Lyndall Anderson would like to speak.
Mr. Chairman, and to the board, I just want to speak on the relationship that we have with the special district fire departments, at the sheriff's department specifically. And Jim knows more than anyone in the room that, you know, we've worked hard to foster a good relationship between the entities. And, you know, when we go to a call for service, they stand shoulder to shoulder with men and women of the sheriff's department. They're men and women that live in their districts. And, you know, I think this comes from a good place and just as collaborative effort that it would show to the staff. So, I mean, I support it, and that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Through the chair, just an obvious question for county council. The seal is trademark or copyrighted in some way. No one can use it except by our permission. Is that an accurate basis?
I have no information that our county seal is trademarked or copyrighted.
So then do we have any control of it?
The answer is yes, we do, because there is a business and professions code section that makes it a misdemeanor, I believe, for any private entity to use the county seal. We do not have any policy, as Mr. Mallon mentioned, regarding the use of the county seal by another public agency. I think part of the recommendation, and I believe Supervisor Fletcher is correct. We could adopt a policy for the use of the county seal. We could, as part of that policy, have a use agreement that would provide for defense and indemnity of the county in the event that the county did get sued because of any confusion that was created. Those, again, from a legal standpoint, that would be my advice. You know, I don't have any issue with what has been said here today insofar as fostering the close relationship, keeping that close relationship. I think that's all healthy. But I'm not the policy guy, y'all are. I'm telling you from a legal standpoint, not to scare anyone, but to protect the county as best I can from a legal standpoint, I would recommend that we develop a policy. It could be done quickly. So we're not talking about a year's time delay or anything like that, and bring it back to the board. I've already looked at some other counties do it, and I've looked at a few. So we could quickly adopt a policy and a use agreement. Ideally, even if we were to adopt a policy so we could move this thing forward quickly, which is perfectly fine, I would recommend long-term that an ordinance be adopted. The reason being, the ordinance would have the force of law, and you could draft in an enforcement mechanism. Thereby, if an outside entity, whoever it might be, decided they want to use the county symbol, we say no. This board says no. You're not going to use the county symbol for that purpose. The entity does it anyway. With an ordinance, we would have an enforcement mechanism. So we could come back and say you violated the county ordinance, and therefore you're subjected to administrative penalties and or judicial action. On a policy, it doesn't have that enforcement mechanism, but it does, it controls how the county goes about granting that permission. So in answer to that's a long answer to a very specific question. I apologize, but you asked me, and the answer is right now, no, there's nothing controlling it.
Okay. One more statement that was made earlier was in regards to that they would lose the lawsuit if they were made. The argument would be apparent authority, right? That because of the seal, there's the apparent authority.
Yes, sir. It would be along those lines. And I dealt with a lawsuit like this in the past, and it had to do with the Public Housing Authority, which again is a separate legal entity, but they were on the county website as being part of a county department. So when someone took issue with the Public Housing Authority, the county got sued. Now, I was able to extricate the county with an initial pleading. So it wasn't a great expense, but you're absolutely right. The argument was you're basically stopped from denying a relationship because look, it's on your website, it's right there. So it'd be the same kind of argument, yeah.
And then in regards to Mr. Sharp's letter, he's pulling a very specific example that it is an issue that is being investigated currently, where a seal would give that apparent authority. So I hate to make decisions in anticipation of litigation because that's a sad way to live life. But that's a very specific argument that seemed to have some weight. And did you feel that his letter correctly, as read with the context of the circumstances, yes, that would have been a problem for us. That would have been involved us in litigation.
What I can say is we were in litigation anyway. So I don't know that the use of the seal would have made any difference. Now, again, we were able to resolve the issue without great expense, but one of the attorneys in my office did spend a few hours working on that litigation. So in that situation, I don't know that the seal, in that specific situation, I don't know that the existence or non-existence of the seal made any difference whatsoever.
Okay, thank you.
I have a brief comment.
Sure.
I really do like the design. I think we have way more positives than negatives on this, and I'm assuming that we would have to approve the specific design. And if other issues came up, we would have to take a look and approve that design. Am I thinking right?
If you're asking me from a legal standpoint, the answer would be at this moment, no. I think that the strength of the relationship, as described both by Supervisor Fletcher and by our sheriff, would indicate that the district would be more than willing to work with the county, even in the absence of a policy on the design, to address any concerns we might have. But absent the existence of a policy or ordinance, they could pretty much, as a public agency, they can pretty much do whatever they want.
My first thought when I heard this was that they wanted to put the seal separately from there. It would just be a separate badge of just the seal. But now that I see the design, I understand better what they're talking about.
Okay, I have a comment on this item as well. You know, I think some of the concerns that have been expressed, I certainly agree with. You know, the potential exposure to litigation, again, it might not be successful. And certainly the confusion between special districts in the county and who has authority over what. You know I have constituents who certainly believe that the county has some authority over the special districts that serve the area where I live. And they often have come to me, requesting that the county try to do something with respect to those special districts, which of course they're separate governmental entities and we don't have authority of. With that confusion already existing, I can certainly see that incorporating our seal into a logo would make that situation worse. However, I think there's also positives. I think it shows collaboration and cooperation between the county and these entities. I think that if multiple fire departments in the district or in the county chose a logo like that, it shows how they're related and working together. And so there's lots and lots of benefits. And as mentioned by Supervisor Vasquez, I think it actually looks really, really, really good. My preference is actually to see an alternate logo in there that could be shared by all the fire departments that represent Yuba County. But I'm not sure it would look that good. So, I mean, I don't know that that's a good solution at the end of the day. So anyway, just my thoughts on it. And before we open it up for public comment, I guess as part of public comment, we did receive something from Charles Sharp that he wanted read during public comment for this item. And so it says the incorporation of the county seal by a special district in Yuba County would ethically obligate the county to provide oversight and recourse to voters and residents should a special district they might be part of not follow accepted standards for ethical governance, transparency, and accountability. This would be a good role for the county to undertake. Charles Sharp from Oregon House. So with that, any additional public comment?
Through the chair, I think I'll take county councils unless Charles has hung out a shingle lately.
So I do not see any additional public comment on this item, so I will bring it back to the board for a motion.
Well, let me make a motion that we send this back to staff to build a policy and an ordinance that binds specific entities, works in the spirit of Yuba County, protects the county as best as possible, and we move forward.
Second.
Okay, I have a first from Supervisor Fletcher and a second from Supervisor Vasquez. Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Vasquez,
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer,
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhrer,
No.
Supervisor Bradford,
Yes.
Supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you. Moving on to item 138, 2021, County Administrator adopt resolution in opposition of proposed regulatory changes to syringe exchange program. Jamie, I see you on.
Hi.
Presenting this item to us. Good morning.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, board members. This is Jamie Yang, Management Analyst from the County Administrator's Office. I have before you a resolution for consideration that is in opposition of the current proposed regulatory changes to the syringe exchange program, also known as SEP, by the California Department of Public Health, also known as CDPH. SEP regulatory consistency, published on February 19th of this year by CDPH, proposes regulatory changes to SEP with impacts to both cities and counties. First, the proposal is to amend to reflect the shortened public comment period for state authorized SEP applications in Health and Safety Code from 90 days to 45 days. And this reflect AB 1810 that was passed in 2018. Second, the words local ordinances from two sections in Title 17 of the California Code of Regulations is to be removed. Public comment period is currently active and will close on April 5th. Just want to share with you, based on the county's experience with the state's processing of a SEP application in 2020, there is great concerns about the state's proposal to remove the ability for counties to regulate this issue through a local ordinance. Several local stakeholders, including public health, either opposed or raised concerns during a 2020 application response period, but the state did not require remediation before approving the application for the program to operate locally. A local ordinance in this situation ended up being the only remedy to ultimately prevent the flawed program from being implemented. Without the local option to intervene and appropriate oversight in the states, at the state's level, the county could find itself in a similar situation in the future. With this said, it is recommended that your board adopt a resolution in opposition of the current proposed regulatory changes to the syringe exchange program by the California Department of Public Health. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Great, Jamie. I think this is a perfect example of an area where the county currently has a little tiny bit of local control, and the state is trying to take that away. So I think it's very important that we make our voice heard on this. Additional board comments.
I'd like to make that motion because we need to stop this in its tracks. They've been unsuccessful in these syringe programs across the United States.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a first from Supervisor Vasquez and a second from Supervisor Fuhr. Any additional board comment? Okay, I do know we have a member of the public. Miss Allen would like to speak on this item.
Hi, gentlemen. Thank you. So I did want to speak on this. I'm really happy that you're making a resolution in opposition of this syringe exchange program. I mean, just because you guys are writing this, I'm sure you're aware of the issues that this program has and how dangerous this can be for the community. So great job doing that. I really appreciate it, and I hope it will pass today. I did want to just point out that this is exactly the type of thing that we're talking about with the charter counties. You know, a resolution, as you guys know, has no teeth. It's not a law. So, you know, you're stating a symbolic statement today, which I appreciate, and I think it's a good thing. But, you know, I think that we do have area where we can have more control. And this is exactly the type of thing that we're talking about, is the state doesn't represent what we want here, and they don't have what we want in best interest. So thank you guys for making this statement in opposition of the syringe program, and I hope to see more of this type of spirit in the future.
Thank you, Miss Allen. Any additional public comment? Okay. Any additional board comment? Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Vasquez,
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer,
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhr,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford,
Yes.
Supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Moving on to correspondence, the board may direct any item of informational correspondence to a department head for appropriate action. So correspondence is as listed on the agenda. Next, we will move on to board and staff member reports. And should we start with Dr. Liu this morning, Kevin? Or do we want to start with board members?
Either way, if Dr. Liu is ready to go, we can start with Dr. Liu.
Good morning, Dr. Liu. Let's start with you this morning.
Good morning, all. You hear me okay? So this morning, I'm going to report on 3 topics that the community have submitted and said that they would like me to comment in more detail. So one is regarding the status of the vaccine eligibility, in particular, who's eligible within the frontline sectors. So just kind of take you all the way back in late December 2020, when the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine were both approved in late 2020, the initial wave was for direct healthcare workers to qualify, and then subsequent to that, within phase 1B tier 1, we did a gradual rollout, so 65 years and older within Sutter County and Yuba County. Then late in February 20th, 2021, we rolled it out to those 3 frontline sectors of food and agriculture, emergency services, and education and childcare, and specifically for those 50 to 64, given the extremely limited vaccine vaccine supply. Then when the supply was able to be loosened a little bit, we expanded to all ages within those 3 frontline sectors, in addition to those 65 years and older by March 6th. And I am also happy to confirm that we have a third vaccine approved in February 28, 2021. That's the Johnson & Johnson 1 dose. And with that availability, very limited, only 1,500 for Yuba County and Sutter County combined, we were able to offer it to mobile transient population, such as homeless, unhoused individuals, inmates, correctional officers, detention officers, and also migrant farm workers. We are hoping that we will get more supply of the Johnson & Johnson, because we do hear of robust demand from the community, but that update in terms of allocation likely will not happen until next week, with the second batch of the Johnson & Johnson not arriving until likely the first week of April. So that's topic number 1. For the second topic is to talk about inquiries in regards to the need to request the service of quarantine orders. So quarantine orders are utilized very, very rarely, and most of the time it's used because someone is considered infectious or most likely to become infectious with a communicable disease such as COVID, but we also use it, say, for tuberculosis. And these individuals have said that they are not willing to comply with public health recommendation and pose a risk to not only themselves but others in the public because they're not willing to isolate at home. So in those rare circumstances, we do ask for the assistance of law enforcement to actually serve the orders. It's been several months since I needed to ask either side, Sutter County or Yuba County, to service those orders. But in rare circumstances, we do ask for their assistance. Please note that we definitely try to work really closely with the Sheriff Department to provide detailed information about the infectious period, the address, and the indication for the need for the quarantine order. And then every sheriff deputy, of course, are well fitted with N95 masks and other PPE prior to coming to service that order. And then thirdly, there was lots of topic interest in terms of mask wearing and sort of its safety and efficacy. So I want to reiterate that mask wearing has definitely been an evolving science. So initially, we thought that mask wearing was not needed because you don't need necessarily to wear a mask with the flu. But then more and more data was coming out that mask wearing was very critical for what's called source control. So source control means that once you wear a mask, your respiratory droplets are contained within you so that it doesn't actually go into the air or someone else can breathe that in. Then finally, in November 2020, we had even more evidence that mask wearing not only protects the opposite person, but it actually also helps to protect you. So it's not 100%, but up to about 50 to 75% of what's called personal filtration is accomplished when you wear a mask. Mask wearing is safe, and in terms of CO2 retention, that is not a worry if you go into the CDC website for both the scientific area and also for the general public. There's actually a great section to talk specifically about carbon dioxide. So when we breathe out carbon dioxide, it doesn't get actually retained within the mask or between our mouth and the mask, because the molecules of the carbon dioxide is small enough that no matter the cloth, no matter how many layers there are, you can do double masking, you can even do an N95 mask. The molecules of the carbon dioxide is so small that it actually will go out regardless of what type of mask that you wear. But the molecules of COVID-19 as a virus is prevented from entering. So you really have to think through the size of these very microscopic molecules and not all sort of molecular microscopic entities are sort of the same diameter. In terms of wearing for specific population, the CDC again reiterates that it's safe to wear even for individuals who have, say, asthma or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Really, the main populations who mask wearing is not recommended are the very young, so those who are younger than 2 years and younger. It's because we don't know if they can actually adhere to wearing the mask, and then certain individuals with disability, especially anatomical disability, where it's really hard for them to maintain wearing a mask consistently. And then finally, in terms of do we still need to wear a mask in the midst of the aggressive vaccine rollout? I'm going to quote Dr. Rochelle Walensky, the CDC director, who just this morning reiterated that we need to maintain the course. We need to continue to wear our masks, especially in public, because that is how we get ahead of the surge in the virus variants. It's a duel right now between aggressive vaccine rollout and the surging of the virus variants. Just this morning, Germany had to shut down for 5 days during Easter because Europe is seeing another surge, essentially a third surge. We don't want to be that within not only Yuba County, Sutter County, but the state and the nation. And that is really predicated on continued vigilance with the non-pharmacologic intervention, especially mask wearing, that we know from a scientific standpoint are safe and is really how we're gonna minimize the risk of another surge. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Liu. Appreciate you taking those questions that the public had submitted and then providing the answers to them during this time. So we'll move over to board members. We'll start with Supervisor Vasquez.
Well, thanks, Gary. Appreciate it. I saw Sean Powers' name in here. I knew that name was familiar, and I'd like to thank him for coming back to Yuba County. He's a very intelligent individual who's very effective, kind of fits in with the team. But I would like to also see that we see if we can get a presentation from Dr. Ravelis and Marysville School District, Mr. Sina, about what this current status is of the schools opening up. It's a big problem to all the people in Yuba County. They depend so much on being able to go to work when their children in school. So I really like to find out what was happening. And let's see. Got to see container housing this past week, and if you really want to see something interesting, go to the end of Park toward the levee, and you'll see effective low-income housing. Unlike Sacramento, who spends $300,000 per unit, this is somewhere in the area about $70,000. So it's a real eye-opener. And when you're back by that levee, just climb on top of the levee and look out and see what code enforcement and Marysville and the different organizations have done to clean up the homeless situation. We're making actually progress in putting them, finding a place for them. And we got a lot of comment from the public, and I'd like to mention to them that life's a participation sport, and maybe you can't or don't want to run for supervisor, but you might consider getting involved with some of the committees and the school boards and voicing your opinion and letting them know that both Dr. Ravelis and Mr. Sina, I think, are elected officials also, and you can make a difference by showing up to some of these school meetings. And that'll do that about everything. So that'll do it for me.
Great, thank you. Supervisor Blazer.
Good morning. I think it's still morning. Yes. Real excited about the Cedar Lane project and the affordable housing. And we have some good examples of well-managed and well-maintained similar operations in the area. And I think this is going to be a really positive visual besides all the benefits. And just sort of along the same line, code enforcement, I know Seth sees a lot of it, we all do, Andy. If there's any way to amp that up, more staffing, I'm not sure, but I know there's a real backlog on code enforcement. And you know, you drive around some of these areas, sometimes I just want to get out of the truck with a shovel and a leaf blower and start cleaning things up, because there's some really bad situations, and I hope we can eventually get ahead of it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Supervisor Fuhr.
If Dr. Lou's still on the line, I'm curious, I believe she still has a mask mandate that is redundant with the state's mandates. I was wondering if we could just kind of clear the board and have her cancel that mask mandate as well, since it is already encompassed and provided for by the state level. If she's not on, then I'll go on to my next thing. There's a couple of contacts I had with the community in regards to feral cats. And so there's a group called Field Haven. They're doing trap and release in Marysville. They wanted to see if that program could be expanded. And so I wanted to direct staff to contact the police department for Marysville and their relationship with Field Haven to see if that is something that might be useful to us as a health issue for the county as in the whole. And then my third question is in regards to a mandate we have in regards to no weapons in county facilities. In light of the shooting yesterday at the shopping market where 10 people were murdered, last week we had 8 murdered. It seems like telling people not to bring weapons isn't very effective at stopping people from using weapons. And so perhaps letting people defend themselves might be useful. And requiring no one to have weapons merely creates a situation of sitting ducks, fish in a barrel that I think we should probably try and avoid. So I sent a possible modification to our weapons ban that would allow CCW holders to have their weapons with them. And that would provide some protection to people who would otherwise be defenseless if some sort of senseless violence was to occur, like what happened yesterday in Colorado. And so it'd be my hope that we could change the policy. I think that the best course of action would be to drop the policy in total. But if not, then at least modify the policy so responsible gun owners with a CCW license would be allowed to carry to prevent that sort of tragedy from ever happening here.
Thank you.
So I'd like to direct staff to make those changes.
If I may, the Brown Act does provide that there can be brief comments by members of the legislative body, even if those items are not agendized. And specifically to Supervisor Fuhr's point here, it would be the board to direct staff to come back with something.
I would like the board to direct the staff then.
Okay, and as the Brown Act reads, just so everybody knows I'm not making this stuff up. Furthermore, a member of the legislative body or the body itself, subject to rules or procedures of the legislative body, may take action to direct staff to place a matter of business on a future agenda. So it would be by motion. Supervisor Fuhr has requested that the board consider making such a motion, or Supervisor Fuhr could make such a motion, and another member could second it to direct staff to come back with a modification to the, we'll call it no weapons policy on county premises.
I make such a motion.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, I hear a first and a second. I'm guessing in a case like this, there's no, it's just, we vote on it. There's no public comment. There's no, is that correct, counsel?
It does not, the section itself does not require public comment on that, but the board could allow public comment on it if they so choose. The public will have a chance to comment when the item is brought back, but if you want to take some now, you can.
Okay. No, I think it's appropriate to have it when the board is actually considering whether or not to do that. At this point, we're just considering whether or not to consider it. So, and we have a first and a second. So roll call vote, please, Mary.
Supervisor Vasquez,
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer,
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhr,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford,
Yes.
Supervisor Fletcher. Supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay.
And
Anything?
then I saw a note that said Dr. Liu would be available to respond. So if she could talk about if we can get rid of that mask mandate that's already covered by state regulations and is redundant on our end, that would be great.
Dr. Liu, are you there? You go.
Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up. I will definitely take that into consideration. But as with everything, I would like to review.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Liu. Council, anything else from you as far as comments, just general comments?
No, sir.
Okay. CAO Mallon, anything from you?
I didn't want to cut in line if the supervisors wanted to finish reporting out, but from a county operations standpoint, I've asked all departments to provide me with an operational plan to realize kind of a full level of service, pre-COVID full level of service by May 3rd and the May 3rd is just a target. But I mean, our staff have done a phenomenal job over this past year of trying our best to provide, services at pre-COVID level through COVID. And as we're seeing light at the end of the tunnel, from a vaccination standpoint, as well as case counts reducing, I just wanted us to be prepared as we transition to pre-COVID or post-COVID life with pre-COVID levels of service, if that makes sense. So we're operationalizing that right now, and I just wanted to make sure the board was aware. That's all I have.
Great, thank you, Kevin. And sorry, Supervisor Fletcher, I think I skipped you. So I thank you, Kevin, for kind of bringing that up.
Thank you. I was going to jump in and let you know that. Several items. I really want to thank staff for their extra effort in finding grant dollars that help support our fire issues in the foothills. They have been working overtime, I know, and they have been successful in gathering some of those. So hopefully we can report out here in the next month or two that kind of gives an overview of all the different projects that are ongoing in the foothills that are beneficial for our fire controls up here. I'd like to direct staff. There's a letter that was submitted in reference to the Historic Resource Commission regarding the assessment records. This discussion goes back, I'm not even sure how many years, 3-4 years at least, that we've been working on this scenario. If staff could bring back some recommendations, my understanding is that the Historical Society is actually ready to move on this at no cost to the county. All they need is direction and support from the board. So if you can look into that, give a report at the next board meeting that we can make a motion that will protect those particular records. And again, I would think that would work for the next board meeting. Also, I have all received information from the public that they were requesting for spay-neuter surgery equipment through animal control. I've asked the sheriff to take a look at some numbers, and potentially again, if staff can take a look at this, present a presentation back to the full board as to the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think there's certainly value here that could be beneficial to our community, but it also comes with a cost. If you can take a look at that and bring that back to the next board meeting, I believe that Sheriff has all the data you need to run with initially. And wrapping up with yesterday, the State Board of Forestry had a meeting to discuss some regulations within 44 counties within California that are rather restrictive and limiting, and Yuba County is one of those. I testified along with 22 other supervisors in the state yesterday, and at the end of the day, the Board of Forestry adopted the regulation. It is now moving towards the 45 days of response from counties. Unfortunately, this should have not gone that far, but they elected to move it this far rapidly. This started only in the last few months. This could have a huge impact on not only Yuba County, but other counties throughout California. So just kind of an update. We'll keep you informed as best I can through RCRC. They are also working on this issue, and I'll let you know as we move forward. And that's it for me.
Are you going to give us copies of that, Randy?
I can provide you with a one-page, what they provided us with at the board meeting.
Well, that's 100% more than what I have. So
I'll be more than happy to send it to you. Actually, Dan Peterson has a fairly in-depth discussion as to what it looks like. It would be expensive for us to really give the state an overview of the impact. Our impact, and I'll leave that for Dan. It's not pleasant. It doesn't look good. So maybe we'll put this on the agenda sometime in the next 30 days for him to give that evaluation, if you don't mind, Dan.
Not at all. I have most of it written up, so it'd be my pleasure.
I think that would be the most impactful for you to really hear the impacts, what we know and what we don't know.
would this also involve the agency, water agency?
There's a piece of it that does concern me that could impact the agency. They have a copy of it. They're also evaluating it. So I believe they'll be working with Dan, the county, and we'll see what we can do.
Thank you, sir.
Before we leave Supervisor Fletcher, did I understand it to be a motion to bring an agenda item for a letter of support of the, is it the Historical Society?
It is a motion to bring back some recommendations from staff as to what they can do and are willing to do, supported by the board.
Okay.
Second.
Randy, from what I understand, all they need is an observer to watch them move the records so they don't get into confidential areas. They're concerned that they're deteriorating in that damp situation. They have a place to move them to. So all they need is a body to watch them.
This has been an ongoing for years.
Yeah, I know.
I'm just getting to the point of we need to resolve this, help them resolve this, if that's what it takes. That's what I would ask staff to bring that back.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Vasquez,
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer,
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhrer,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford,
Yes.
Supervisor Fletcher.
Yes, and this would also apply to the animal control spay neuter program in Yuba County.
Motion passes.
I'll if you want a separate one, I'll make the motion for this one as well.
Thank you.
Second.
And for that motion, that would include trap and release programs being explored?
I don't believe it is in this particular one, but it certainly could be adopted in it.
Okay, so if we can amend that to explore trap and release, then that would be fantastic.
Will you amend your motion, Randy?
I'm amend it to include that.
All
Andy?
right. I'll amend my second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Vasquez,
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer,
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhr,
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford,
Yes.
Supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
Excellent.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Is that it, Supervisor Fletcher?
That's it.
Okay, I'll be brief. I just wanted to mention, started to become more engaged with the Greater Sacramento Economic Council. I'm serving on their board on behalf of Yuba County this year. And we recently had a meeting to talk about what's going on in Yuba County and how they can help us with respect to economic development and with respect to the region as a whole. And then last week, the MLC actually organized a tour for GSEC of Beale Air Force Base. So it was great that GSEC is really acknowledging the tremendous asset that is not only to Yuba Sutter, but to the entire Sacramento region, and is looking to see how they can support Beale and their mission as well. So those were some great things to participate in. So that's it for me this week. We have a closed session as agendized next, and we'll let, in just a second, council can say who needs to be moved into the breakout room. Once we are in there, we will take a 10-minute break before that discussion. And then after closed session, just so the public and the board is aware, we will be adjourning the meeting until 1:30 p.m., at which point we have some administrative hearings that we need to conduct. So with that, council, who needs to be in the room?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I need to be there. All the board members need to be there. Kevin Mallon, our CAO, Dr. Lou, Jen Vasquez, Jill Abel. And I think that covers it. Mr. Mallon, anybody else? No? Okay, good to go.